I think we are too impatient and we really need to start thinking like content creators on social media. They do not think, wow, this 30-second social media clip just took me 2 hours to plan. What they think is, wow, I just spent only 2 hours working on something that could potentially reach hundreds of thousands of people. Hey everybody, Dacia Coffee here, and welcome back to the Marketing Blender Show. Today, we are talking about why is B2B marketing so bad at writing hooks and how to become magnetic in your marketing. I love this because too often B2B marketing is just in this graveyard of boring, technical bleh. And it is time to bring color. So I'm going to give you some super practical things. I want to break down the construct of what is a marketing hook. I'm going to take you through a whole bunch of examples and where to use them. And I really want you to hang out for the end because I'm going to show you some tips on social media. And I really kind of want to shake you up into thinking like, how do I actually make my marketing so good it is massively follow worthy? So to answer the first question, why are B2B marketing groups or companies so bad at this? Well, I think it's a couple different things. Number one, I definitely think you are all, and we are all, too smart for our own good. Now, you got to think, business to business environments are typically complex. It is typically smart buyers and smart deliverers, and all the time we have a tendency to want to go to the how and the technical and our mastery. But that is not how the brain works, and it is not how to win the war on attention. But unfortunately, this is one of the things that kills hooks because we try to add complexity too early when we are trying to get people's attention and get them to engage with us. So I think that's number one. Number two is that honestly, I think a lot of you guys just wish you didn't have to do marketing. So then because you have, a little bit of a snotty attitude around this, where you're like, I wish I could just do great work for great people and enjoy it. I don't want to have to do marketing. Why do I have to convince anybody of anything? Because you're bringing that paradigm, you'll have a tendency to go, yeah, just whatever, right? And so then it's about getting it out the door versus making it effective. And honestly, guys, what's the point of getting stuff out the door if it doesn't work? So I'm just saying, maybe we need to check our paradigm and our frame real quick. But then the third one is actually somewhat closely related to this one, but I think we are too impatient and we really need to start thinking like content creators on social media. They do not think, wow, this 30-second social media clip just took me 2 hours to plan. What they think is, wow, I just spent only 2 hours working on something that could potentially reach hundreds of thousands of people. All right, that's good ROI, you guys. Like, that is a proper way to think about it, especially if you're thinking about effectiveness. And that is what great marketing hooks are about. Effective. So let's dive in. So what is a hook? Well, it's exactly what it sounds like. It's that thing that just gets its claws in you and just compels you to stay hooked or engaged, connected to what's happening on screen, in that marketing campaign, on that direct mail piece, in that email, in that video, any of the things, right? So it's what pulls people in. Just reeling them in, right? Now, they can be used all over the place. They can be used in subject lines. They can be used in first sentences of emails. They should be used in all headlines. They can be used in your visuals. They can be used in how you open a speech, how you close a speech, how you open a sales conversation, how you open a meeting. So many different applications. Honestly, you really shouldn't ever be doing communication in a one-to-few or one-to-many environment without thinking, how do I pull people in, right? Be amazing. And this is not about charisma. This is about psychological resonance. And so let's unpack that a little bit. Why do hooks actually work? Well, first of all, they're grabbing your emotions. Now, I'm going to overly simplify Generally speaking, there are 6 core emotions. Did it make you sad or angry or scared or happy or excited or tender? Sachet. 6 core emotions. And honestly, the next time you see something really compelling, you're going to be able to make a very direct line towards one of those 6 core emotions. So they are emotional. Now, emotions are fundamental, and a lot of times they are related to our core motivations. So this is really, really important. It's kind of what is our private or secret agenda. Now, at Blender, we talk a lot about something called mirroring because the brain likes to pay attention to itself, and hooks are a more advanced application of mirroring because now you're mirroring things that they think are funny, things that they are curious about, right? And so this is another way to talk to people about themselves or show them a version of the world that they are predisposed to be interested in. So there's something in psychology called the curiosity gap. Our brain cannot handle not knowing the end of something. And so especially in social media or in really amazing email marketing, the very opening of that is something that starts a pathway where you're like, okay, what's going to happen here, right? And then really great writing, really great content creation creates a gap between the hook and then the payoff. I know all of you guys have done this where you're watching something on social media, it's starting to go a little bit too long and you're just hanging in there because you have to see the end. It's not just you. It works on all of us because that curiosity gap is real. All right, we have a need for resolution. But additionally, our brains like to look for pattern disruption, right? So this is the lizard brain being like, am I safe? Am I safe? Am I safe? So anything that looks weird or different, we are compelled to pay attention to, especially really quickly. So surprising visuals are wildly effective because it is also another curiosity gap where we're like, wait, what is that? Why is that different? I need to understand this, right? Of course, lots of social media and great marketing or great entertainment is about escapism, right? So this is, again, one of those more advanced aspects of mirroring where it's like, what do people enjoy paying attention to in order to avoid the stress of their day-to-day? And then the final thing about hooks that I want to talk to you about before we go into examples is they need to be low cognitive load. So remember I talked to you about being too smart for your own good? Low cognitive load means it is so easy to understand what is about to happen. I am not talking to you about advanced software integrations or extreme specifics on, automation and, IoT and manufacturing 4.0. I'm not going super deep into financial diagnostics. I'm simply saying something that everyone understands no matter what their background is in the first couple seconds. So low cognitive load, no dissonance, no speed bumps in order to getting hooked and interested into that content. Let's dive into a few examples. So I'm going to start more with text examples and brainstorming. Everything starts with words. We're nerd. So everything starts with words. So I'm going to give you kind of some examples. Again, these can be applied in a million different ranges. And then I'm going to show you some really fun ones in social media. Why social media? Because they're kind of the best at it. And so if you unpack what they're doing so brilliantly on social media, you can literally reverse engineer that into so many other aspects of your B2B marketing. So we already talked about curiosity. So not surprising, lots of great hooks immediately make people curious. The secret to achieving this blank, right? Or something I learned that no one else has figured out. Another one, especially when it comes to personal, I have a confession. Right? You immediately want to lean in. Or you can think about things that are really, really hot, right? Like the time I got fired or why I got fired. Curiosity, right? And then, of course, surprising facts do work. They do need to be surprising, however. So, just a simple did you know, that last half of did you know better be really interesting, not just interesting to you. Okay, questions about familiar things, right? So the brain loves storytelling. So another great example, if we're using questions to pique people's interest and their curiosity, would be Have you ever wondered how this big brand achieved this, right? So an interesting story, and that is kind of a did you know, but a behind the scenes. So something surprising that is about something familiar to us every single day can be a really, really great intro to a storytelling one. And then I mentioned pattern disruption. So if you're using a question, another one that I love is, what's the difference between this and that? Now, what I love about this one is the brain loves to win. Like typically when you're watching this, you want to figure it out before the speaker tells you. So anything that can sound or feel like a problem or a puzzle that someone can solve and kind of prove to themselves they are smarter than you, usually a really, really good hook. Okay, there are problem and solution hooks as well, right? So this tool helps you to solve this problem faster than a speeding train or whatever, but it's some sort of significant payoff, but you're trying to really condense it into something magnetic. Another problem solution hook is, here's this simple change that you can make to radically lose weight or fix your business or add $1 million to your bottom line. You get the idea. So problem, solution. And then the payoff is, what is that promise? What is the answer to the promise that you just made? Now, I started already hinting at the next type of hook, which is a storytelling hook. The brain loves story because memory is constructed in a story framework. It's literally how we understand the world, with a hero, villain, beginning, middle, and end conflict type of structure, that story. And that's actually how we build memory blocks in our brain. So storytelling and personal hooks are really great. Now, I mentioned one earlier, and the spicier, the better. What I learned when I got fired, or why I got fired, the time I almost died, right? Or think any sort of volatile, life-changing, mind-blowing scenario. And if that's in the first sentence, that is immediately going to pique someone's interest. And this is really important. You can tell a great story, but if you blew the first couple of words, nobody's ever going to know it was worth listening to. So that's why it's so, so important to take the time to do hooks. A couple other ones are how I went from 0 to $1 million in 5 minutes flat, or how I became a long distance runner and the world's best blah, 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 right? So really telling people what they're about to hear, but making sure that you're exaggerating, or more appropriately, pulling the most interesting aspect of your story to the beginning in the very first sentence. A couple other ones, and it depends on your style and not overusing this, or unless it becomes a familiarity component, can I be real with you for a second? And so this goes back to, can I tell you a confession, or I have a confession to make? So using kind of some of these like highly evocative phrasing can be really, really powerful. The biggest mistake I ever made, the most surprising, X, Y, and Z, that type of thing. All right, a couple more. I don't love these, but you're going to recognize them, so I am going to share these with you. You can do some really direct ones. So kind of like, hey, let me tell you something. That's a direct or command hook, right? So it does get people's attention. These can get worn thin. So here's one that we've all seen. Stop scrolling. Does it work? Not as good as it used to when it first came out, right? So when you're telling something, make sure that it's evocative. And typically you do need to have a verbal hook behind this one in order to really be compelling. A few that I do look in regards to a command is, here's an exact process to fix this problem. Or pay attention to these top 3 things. So if you're really bringing some amazing subject matter expertise here, I really do like these, especially in the business to business. But remember, no or low cognitive load. Don't be too smart for your own good. Otherwise, people will bolt because they're not following you. So this is really important. And then we've all seen this one. This hack will change your life. They can be really good as long as it's well done. Again, there's typically needs to be a verbal hook, which we're going to talk about in just a minute. But that's another example of a command or a direct hook. Okay, there's also some old school ones, super bold claims, vulnerability, like this really hurt my feelings, the kind of tears or something like that. Testimonials. I helped my client go to $1 billion in 2 years, these type of things. So our brain, our BS meters are getting pretty high. Like we're pretty sensitive to these. So I would be remiss in not mentioning them because especially in the old school, ad days, these were really important. Also urgency and fear of missing out. These are highly resonant emotional states, but they need to be well done. So urgency and FOMO, really important. Okay. So I promised you some examples, not just prompts, but some super specific examples. And we're going to go ahead and turn to social media for this because they're so fun and B2B can learn so much about this. So let me break it down that there's a couple different types of hooks and you need to be thinking about this across the board, not just in social media, but you can have verbal hooks, right? You can have text hooks, so what's written on the screen versus what you're saying, and then you can have visual hooks, which I've been mentioning. So let's start with a verbal hook. Well, it's those first couple seconds or that very first sentence that you say that makes people go, okay, I got to listen to this. So one of my favorites, an oldie but a goodie, it's from a couple years ago, and it's from a group called One Peak Creative. They do a lot of coursework and teaching people how to go viral. But he's got a great opening verbal hook. So let's go ahead and take a look.
Drive a Tesla because I think it makes me better than everyone? Of course not. I know it does.
It kind of got you, right? Like the humor aspect, the emotional aspect. Now you're tracking with him and it was actually enjoyable to give your attention and to be hooked by that. And so love this. You can see lots of examples if you follow that. They have multiple channels, but if you follow that example, another verbal hook as an example, and there's so many of these, I didn't even pull an example, but maybe Monica we'll see, is okay, I'm about to spoof my husband. Let's see what happens. Right? And so any of those telling you what's about to happen is a really great one, but it's verbal because they're inviting you in. There's nothing particularly special about what's happening through the eyeballs. And so it's all about being invited into the story. So a couple great examples of the verbal. And again, going back, hook, payoff, right? They tell you what needs to be resolved, and then you're interested enough to stay all the way through so you can finally have that mental or psychological resolution. Okay, so moving on to text hooks. So these are typically the captions or the thumbnails on the first image that you see. Now, some of my most favorite examples comes from Diary of a CEO podcast, and there are some really great ones. So a couple, like you can see on the screen, stop using scented candles. Come on. Like that's good, right? Like it's just weird enough to be like, what? Why? My wife burns tons of scented candles, or I have scented candles burning in my office right now. Another one, your phone is destroying your brain. It doesn't even matter if you agree with this. You immediately want to hear what he's about to say. Or I worry for nice people. It, again, doesn't even matter what your world paradigm is. This one's pretty compelling and it's pretty hard not to stop and go, okay, what's he going to say? Why is he worried for nice people? See, so really examples. So again, this is still a hook payoff component where the hook is so good, it piques that curiosity and taps into some specific emotional response, whether it's skepticism or nervousness or anger or even agreement, but you get really fired up, whether it's excited or tender or scared or angry. You see, back to those core emotions, that's what it's doing. And we're compelled to find out what the payoff was. So those are some of my favorites. Now, the last one are visual hooks, and these are fun. Now, the interesting thing about a visual hook is you don't even have to have a payoff. Like sometimes it's so weird. Now, it might make people mad if you don't have a payoff, but sometimes they're so weird that people just have to stay hoping you're going to explain why there is something surprising in the visual frame. An old one that I watched where One Peak Creative had given this as an example was there was a girl eating a stick of butter. Now, she was not talking about butter. She was not talking about health. She was not talking about anything, but she was literally eating a stick of butter. And wow, she got a lot of views because people were hoping that she would stop and explain it. Now, she never did, but it did improve her watch time because people hung out to see what was happening. So again, you kind of got to play that. Are people going to be amused by that? Or are they going to be angry and be like, I'm unfollowing? Okay, couple examples that I did pull. Oh, just being Melanie, one of my faves, the We Do Not Care Club. Okay, her visual hooks are so funny, right? Like she's right in the camera. You can see all of the different crazy. She's basically letting her crazy show, and it's fantastic. And she has a lot of hooks that continue throughout that she repeats with this familiarity pattern. And so she has figured out her format where she doesn't have to come up with a million different things over and over and over. And millions of people, women specifically, absolutely love her and sign up for this, but the visual hook is just priceless. Okay, another one, anything on a street, right? Any interviews, any people's faces like what or wow, surprised faces, people looking over here, curiosity. What are they looking at? Why are they all looking up? Why do they look disgusted? Those are visual hooks. Sometimes people's reaction is the thing that will pull people in, no matter how amazing the performance or that street thing might be. You know, everything from surprises and people jumping out, people getting hurt in the first frame, all of these are great visual hooks. So just kind of that visual narrative playing out that makes us go, okay, I want to see the rest of this. So we'll take a look at a couple of different examples, but wow, I know all of us death scroll on these all the time. And then visual hooks can be specific to the audience that you are catering to. So sports is a great example. Let's take a look at this one. Now, even if you're not a rugby fan, this is so weird. You just have to go, what is he doing? Right? Now, there are some people who are not going to care at all. They might know nothing, where they don't even have the slightest idea what type of sport that might be, and they're going to scroll right past. But chances are the algorithm's not going to feed a person like that any sort of sports content. So this is a great example. The same thing can be applied to design, weird, cool, amazing, surprising aesthetics, right? Fashion, dancing, basically any type of hobby. I mean, it can be somebody doing something weird in golf or in tennis or in pickleball. House hacks, right? So who thinks cleaning the house is fascinating? Come on. We have all watched these household hacks because we just can't help it. And every single time you will see a very weird verbal hook where you're like, wait, what's he doing with that cucumber, right? And that's how it pulls us in. And let's just go ahead and say it. Sex sells, right? And so this is kind of a cute one. And there's reasons why this hook back from the cast of Friends really works. Like, yes, they're beautiful and appealing, but also this is going to appeal to people that loved Friends or love advertising or love pop culture. And so immediately we're pulled back in. So this is a really cool verbal hook for many, many different reasons, including familiarity combined with curiosity, which makes us really, really want to see the payoff. And on top of that, this communicates, ooh, this might be somebody I want to follow. So I hope you had as much fun with some of those as I did collecting them. And I want you to start paying attention to the things that you pay attention to. Start reverse engineering it, because it doesn't matter how technical your environment is. You are still serving humans. We all love to be entertained or fascinated or pulled in. We love to be in it with other people. So every single one of these tools is available to you as a B2B firm, no matter how large or how small. And again, I really challenge you to rewrite your narrative on how much time you spend on this. I talked to a firm the other day where they had spent no less than 16 hours putting together the technical framework of an email campaign, and they end up having less than 2% open rate. Man, can you imagine if they would have even just taken 1 or 2 of those meeting hours and instead of talking about their technical message, talking about what fascinates and what's the most interesting and compelling thing about them? That is payoff, right? And that's what I want you thinking about. And then on top of that, this makes marketing fun because it's more effective. So deconstruct, slow down in order to speed up. Think about being follow worthy, and definitely think about how fun it is to win the war on attention and cut through all of this nonsense because you have something important and worthy to say in the world. Now, one of my favorite topics is that servant leadership can and does change the world. And you know what, guys? This is a weird example of that. You are simply giving people what they want so that you can guide them to a place to show them what they need. You're meeting them where they are. Inside of how the brain naturally works, you're reducing cognitive load so you're not making things difficult and you're inviting them into a pathway of progress with something that is fun and worth their attention. That's real marketing return on investment. So thank you so much. I would love to see any of your examples. If you put this into play, definitely DM me or email me, send my team these examples. We would love to show your awesomeness. And yeah, let's just make this whole B2B marketing environment just a much more resonant, exciting, and successful ecosystem. All right, you guys, I will see you next week. Onward and upward.